Hello, everyone. Welcome to Americans Learn. My name is Kit, and today we're going to get a history lesson, a Roman history lesson. And we are going to learn about the campaign of Julius Caesar in Gaul. Now, this is from the channel Kings and Generals. So, everyone, grab your pens and your notebooks, and we're about to get our learn on in regards to the history of ancient Rome, most notably this campaign in which Julius Caesar enacted, which would eventually lead to the devastating Roman Civil War and the end of the Roman Republic. But before the Republic falls, Caesar must invade Gaul. So, without further ado, since I'm in charge of the ones and twos, let's get ready to enjoy this video. And we'll be watching it in snippets, so please be sure to check out the original video as well. And more importantly, if you have any questions or comments, or perhaps maybe battles or documentaries that we should be checking out here at Americans Learn, please type it in the comment section below. We'd be happy to get your feedback.
The Gauls were one of Rome's oldest and most bitter enemies. They had sacked Rome and throughout the centuries fought alongside the Republic's most dangerous adversaries, including Pyrrhus and Hannibal. By the end of the 2nd century BC, southern Gaul was largely subdued. However, there was still tension in northern Gaul, particularly along the Rhine. These tensions would ultimately climax in the Gallic Wars, the conflict that would shape the future of Western Europe for centuries to come, giving rise to the Holy Roman Empire and modern-day France. The conflict that would forever etch the name Gaius Julius Caesar in the annals of history. Rome had been rocked by almost...
I do find it interesting, too, when you look at the history of Julius Caesar. He came from a family, a noble family in ancient Rome, but he wanted to make a name for himself. And make a name for himself specifically in Roman politics. And in order to do so, especially if you were going to be involved in the Game of Thrones, that is the Roman Senate, you had to be cutthroat, you had to be creative, you had to be quick on your feet, and you needed to build a name for yourself. And in order to do this, many of the Roman senators, co-consuls, all of that, they had to serve in the front lines. They had to serve in commanding the legions. Now, again, a lot of these senators and politicians were not proficient wartime generals. Perhaps, there's been numerous cases in which they have led their forces to doom. But Julius Caesar was something different. And that's something I could respect about him. And what I've always wanted to have in my possession, at least in my book collection, was Julius Caesar's accounts of the Roman campaign in Gaul. Now, of course, many historians have viewed this as just war propaganda, Caesar making himself look like this know-it-all, end-all, be-all person. And to be fair, Julius Caesar was able to launch an effective campaign in Gaul, but it would just, for me, I would have loved to at least have a chance to read those books, because it's, I guess it could be argued as the first war correspondence ever written down in ancient history. If there's others, please, to the viewing audience, type in the comment section below. We'd love your feedback, but let's get started with the rest of this.
half a century of civil wars, and the Republic was in decline. Both Marius and Sulla had marched on Rome, highlighting the ineffectiveness of the system for maintaining a large empire, and the fact that the legionaries were more loyal to their generals than to the state. Following this chaotic period,
and for those who don't know, Sulla even had Caesar on a hit list, which was not good for Caesar. He was able to walk out of that, were it not for the help of his friends, most notably Pompey Magnus.
3 men had established an unofficial alliance to effectively control the Republic. This was the first triumvirate, consisting of the famous general Pompey the Great, the richest man in Rome, Crassus, and Julius Caesar. Caesar had been consul the year before in 59 BC, but his political campaigning had left him in debt and made him many enemies in Rome. He needed to make money fast and gain enough military success to keep his political adversaries at bay. When the time came for distributing provinces for Caesar to govern as proconsul, he was able to use his political allies to secure Cisalpine Gaul, Illyricum, and Transalpine Gaul for an unprecedented 5 years. This put Caesar in control of 4 veteran legions, the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, all of whom had fought with Caesar before.
Shout out to the 10th Legion.
In Hispania and were loyal to him. They had a total of roughly 22,000 legionaries, plus auxiliaries. Caesar now had the men he needed. All he needed was an excuse for war. Fortunately for Caesar, a Celtic tribe, the Helvetii, was planning a migration into Gaul in 58 BC. Their leader, Orectorix, had formed a confederation with a number of neighbouring tribes, the Tulingi, Latubrigi, Rauraki, and Boii, and now they numbered 368,000 men, women, and children. Orectorix had even convinced them all to burn their homes in order to leave no option of failure. However, soon he was accused of being a tyrant and was forced to commit suicide.
Wow, that is so harsh. To tell your people to burn their homes, and then after he acquired all that power, I have to wonder how many people were watching him commit that act. I have to be careful. I can't say that on YouTube, but where he had to self-delete himself, or did his council decide to say, screw it, we're just going to kill you?
Command passed to Divico. Divico was determined to stick to the plan and began amassing supplies in order to start pouring into Gaul. To do this, they would either have to pass through the land of the Roman ally Aedui and the province of Transalpine Gaul, or take the longer route through the mountain passes in the north. The Romans had built up a healthy fear of migrating tribes following the Cimbrian War in 113 to 101 BC, and so Caesar, hearing of this, was only too willing to come to the rescue of the Aedui. He took the only available legion in the area and force-marched them up to Geneva, destroying the bridge on the Rhone that provided access into Transalpine Gaul. The Helvetii appealed to Caesar, asking for military access through Roman lands and promising they would not attack. Caesar—
That's already suspicious too. You bring up your entire army and say, "Oh, we promise we won't attack anyone." No way. That is suspicious.
Played for time, pretending to consider this offer for almost 15 days. Using this time, his legion was able to construct a fortified embankment almost 5 meters high, stretching 20 miles along the riverbank. With the legion manning the embankment and now in a stronger position, Caesar denied the Helvetii access and refused to allow them to cross. Some of the Helvetii ignored this and attempted to cross nonetheless in small boats, but were prevented from doing so by the legionaries throwing javelins and shooting arrows into them. With the southern route thus blocked, the Helvetii decided to take the longer northern route through the mountains into Gaul. Leaving his top lieutenant, Labienus, in command, Caesar returned to Italy.
Oh, Labienus. If only you believed in the dream of Caesar.
To levy a further 2 legions, and to pull the other 3 veteran legions out of their winter quarters in Aquileia, bringing his total to approximately 33,000 legionaries plus auxiliaries.
Wow.
Despite Labienus being in a strong position to easily block the mountain pass, the Helvetii managed to push into Gallic territories and began ravaging the land. The Gauls pleaded with Caesar to intervene and chase the Helvetii out, and Caesar, yet again, was only too willing to help, marching his legions into the Gallic territories. The decision of Labienus to not hold the Helvetii in the mountains was likely an order received from Caesar. The Celts were now in open terrain, which better suited the Romans.
Which I have to say is pretty interesting, because in order for you to make a name for yourself in Roman politics, you have to go to war. You have to bring in treasury, loot, and yes, also the Romans practiced slavery as well. I mean, anything and anything that could bring you glory and riches, and to keep you and your family protected in Roman politics, Caesar had to enact probably a lot of things and ignore the situation in order for him to turn what was happening in Gaul into an advantageous situation. Huh. And we think our politics are crazy. Can you imagine them in ancient antiquity? Boy, oh boy, here we go.
Roman legions, and their pillaging of Gaul gave Caesar an excuse to intervene. Word reached Caesar that the Helvetii were currently attempting a crossing at the Arar River. They had been crossing in 4 large groups, using many rafts and boats, but due to the size of the horde and their lack of organization, the crossing had already taken them days, and one group was still yet to cross. Caesar took his legions and swiftly marched to the river. Quickly forming his legions into battle formation, Caesar fell upon the Celts waiting to cross. Caught unaware, unprepared, and encumbered by their baggage, the Helvetii did not even have enough time to form a proper battle line. The fighting was over quickly, with the whole stranded group being killed or fleeing into the nearby woods, whilst the other 3 groups could do nothing but watch helplessly from the other side of the river. The main Helvetii force began to move on, and not wanting to lose the initiative, Caesar quickly built a bridge across the river and moved all of his 6 legions across. The crossing that had taken the Celts 20 days had taken the Romans just 1. Caesar began tailing the Helvetii, waiting for the right time to strike. There were a few minor cavalry skirmishes, but nothing decisive. Caesar did once manage to find a battlefield that was advantageous, and even had Labienus in position behind the enemy. However, due to poor communication from his scouts, Caesar was forced to pull back from the battlefield. This caused a delay in Caesar's plan, and he was beginning to run low on rations. He decided to head for the nearby town of Bibracta to resupply his army before continuing the pursuit. As he began to march off, however, Divico gave chase, harassing the rear of the Roman army. Caesar sent his cavalry and light infantry to fight a delaying action in order to buy time to deploy his main force on a nearby hill. The 4 veteran legions formed 3 lines at the front, with the 2 newly levied legions along with the auxiliaries positioned further up the hill. These men were not tested in battle, and so were not expected to do any of the fighting. Instead, they were to guard the baggage and were spread thin across the hill to seemingly increase the size of Caesar's army. The Helvetii, numbering somewhere between 60 to 90,000 warriors, had successfully fought off the Roman cavalry and light infantry, forcing them to retreat. Now they had formed their infantry into a tightly packed shield wall and advanced on the Romans. The front 2 lines of legionaries opened the battle with a volley of javelins. These hampered the Helvetii by becoming stuck in their shields, forcing them to drop them and break into a looser formation. With the shield wall in disarray, the Roman front lines charged into melee. The fighting was intense and tough, but the Romans' discipline and experience gave them the edge. Slowly they began to get the upper hand, with the Helvetii being forced back to a nearby mountain. However, as the Romans pressed up the mountain, a portion of the Helvetii allies, composed of Boii and Tulingi, roughly 15,000 warriors, entered the battle. These men had been acting as a...
I have to wonder, where was the commanders stopping their forces from going that far, or at least to that? Where was all the backup? They should not have done that.
Rearguard protecting the camp, and now they fell on the Roman flank, threatening to encircle them. The Helvetii, bolstered by the arrival of their allies, began pushing back with renewed vigour. With the two front lines of legionaries already engaging the Helvetii on the mountain, Caesar committed his final line of veterans, which had been acting as a reserve. After hours of hard fighting, the Helvetii on the mountain were eventually broken and forced from the battle. However, the Boii and Tulingi fell back to the camp to make a last stand. Using their baggage wagons, they formed a makeshift rampart and continued the fight, hurling missiles down into the Roman ranks. This is where the fighting was the most difficult, as the Boii were famed warriors and fought desperately. Finally, after fighting long into the night, the third line was able to break into the camp, ending the battle.
Oh, what a slaughter.
The battle had lasted almost 12 hours. Caesar had lost perhaps 5,000 men, whilst the Helvetii had lost around 40 to 60,000. Of the 368,000 people who began the migration, only 130,000 were now left. Caesar, with no cavalry to speak of, was not able to give chase immediately, and gave his men 3 days in order to recover from the battle before starting the pursuit. The Helvetii, seeing the Romans chasing them once more, surrendered completely and were forced to return to their homeland and made a vassal of Rome, acting as a buffer between Roman and Germanic lands. Caesar had achieved his aim of gaining a swift military victory, and for now he would be able to hold off his political enemies in Rome. Furthermore, the Romans had now shown themselves to be a powerful force in the Gallic theatre. After his victory, Caesar rested in Bibracte for a short time before moving on.
Okay, and we're going to stop here. All right, so there's a lot to unpack here with this first segment into the Gallic Wars, with Julius Caesar launching his war on the various tribes in that region. First and foremost, Caesar has to make a name for himself, and I'm hoping that sometime in this video or any other kind of follow-up videos, we do get the bigger picture of what politics was like in ancient Rome. As much as we might say the Roman Republic or Rome used to be a republic, technically it was an oligarchy in which rich families, dynastic families, maintained power. So, yes, there was some elections, but usually you were re-electing the son or grandson or nephew or son-in-law of one noble family over another to be in the Roman Senate. And let's face it, in order to be powerful or be recognized as a name, you have to build alliances, marriage alliances, trade, be rich, have loved the people, of course, and have at least served in the Roman military and have some victories under your belt, or be part of one or two successful campaigns. If you have none of those, well, either you are kicked out or you're going to be 6 feet under, and that's being polite and saying that. So what I do hope, at least in this series, we get the history of Roman politics, the various factions, because the one thing that we can take away from this, and I do hope that the video goes into further detail about this, is that Caesar, in this war in Gaul, was able to build himself an image that captured the hearts of the Roman people. Now, of course, let's face it, what Caesar's doing is downright criminal. He's a war criminal, if we compare him to our standards. But in ancient antiquity, the Roman people loved hearing the stories of Caesar's success in Gaul. All the while, as Caesar's gaining all this love and attention and praise from the regular Roman citizen, and while Caesar is enriching himself too, while he might be holding off his enemies in Rome, they are building up, which will lead to a far more devastating conflict. And I can assure you that we here at Americans Learns will be covering it and talking about it. So, if this is the kind of content you guys like, please type in the comment section below. If there's anything that I missed or you would like me to discuss about in these videos, please type in the comment section below as well. We really like to hear your thoughts. Until then, see you next time, folks.